All right, well, welcome back, everyone. We've had some great sessions so far, and we've got three more to round out the day here. No breaks in between these, so we'll try our best to keep everything running on time. And again, everything will be shared on our YouTube channel later on if you do need to get up to leave for any reason and come back. So our next presenter is Roger Watt. He is a graphite artist living in Vancouver, British Columbia, and his exquisite drawings captured our attention several years ago when we did a feature in our magazine, Railroad Heritage, about the contemporary scene in railroad art. Roger was born in the United Kingdom in 1947, and he went to art school there in the late 1960s. He then embarked on a career as an art and creative director in international publishing and as a professional photographer. His drawings have been hung in the Royal Academy Summer Exhibition in London and at England's National Railway Museum in York. Roger had his first solo show at the O.K. Harris Gallery in New York in 2014, and he has since been exhibited in other galleries in New York, London, and Vancouver. He currently has prints on display at Anthony Brunelli Fine Arts in New York and the Plus One Gallery and Folio Illustration Agency in London. He is a member of the British Guild of Railway Artists and a founding member of the American Society of Railway Artists. Roger's presentation, which he calls Drawing the Line, will cover a lifetime of drawing steam locomotives, going all the way from the process of creating his art to exhibiting his pieces internationally. Welcome, Roger. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you very much, Scott. What you've said virtually wipes out half of my presentation, but that's absolutely fine. Absolutely fine. I'll make myself a cup of tea. No, that's great. No, I thank very much for the kind introduction there. And I have to say that first off, I have to really thank Peter Moss for recommending me, putting his reputation on the line pretty much, and to you for taking the risk of putting me in this slot in such a, in such august company. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it's our great pleasure, and we're certainly grateful for Peter for the introduction.
Yeah, he's become a really good friend, and it's a real shame that I haven't been able to get to New York this year to see him, but we all know why that is.
Indeed.
Okay, so I press the share button. Right, are you getting that?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay. Oh, hang on. I pressed share.
You may need to select the screen or.
Oh yeah. Key. That's right.
There we go.
Okay. Right. Okay. Right. I'll just get. Now, how about that?
Perfect.
Okay.
That's great.
Okay. Well, this is I've really sort of expressed my appreciation of being given the opportunity to talk to you today about what I do and what has been the theme of my life as long as I can remember. As the title suggests, this is purely about my lifelong obsession with drawings and railways. It's basically as simple as that. This was one of my first railway drawings. I did it when I was 7. And it was my favorite locomotive, and I drew it using the Hornby 00 electric railway Duchess of Montrose as the model. My father had given me and my brother this electric train set. But even at this stage, I'd used the locomotive as a model, but I'd added action to it, and I'd already noted detailed differences between the model and the real thing. Now, my father was an art director, illustrator in the advertising industry in London in the late 1940s and 1950s. He got me drawing when I was about 4. And a brilliant artist himself. These are a couple of his sample drawings, just to show you what he could do. The first one, he loved mountains, like I do, mainly of his native home in Scotland. The picture on the left is a graphite drawing of a peak, well, two peaks in the Himalayas. And the drawing on the right is a scraper board drawing of the Eiger Massif in the Swiss Alps. Now, I think that scraper board is called scratch board in the US, but it was a very popular medium in the 30s, 40s, and 50s when for printing on low quality paper, it printed better than halftones. And it was used widely in newsprint in newspapers because it did reproduce so well. He was also a keen photographer, and these are some of his photographs from over time. I won't go into the detail of all of them because there was time or the place. But all I'd say on this one is that the picture on the left, which is a Gresley, an LNER Gresley A3 Pacific shot at Waverley Station in Edinburgh, actually made it onto the front of the Railway magazine in the late 1930s. He loved photographing, as and passed on that passion to me as well. Right, here we're getting to it now. This is me on the left on my 7th birthday in 1954. The location is Camden Engine Sheds, which was the engine shed for Euston Station on the XLMS main line between London and Glasgow. And this would have been around about 9:15 in the morning, because the locomotive, which was the Coronation class designed by Sir William Stanier, was just about to reverse down into Euston to take out the Royal Scot service. Now, the Royal Scot was the LMS's main service between London and Glasgow, which commenced in 1862, and it was named it was given its name in 1927 to coincide with the introduction of the Royal Scot class of locomotives that were a big deal for the LMS when they came along in 1927. This is me. This is my 2nd birthday treat the next year. I was then 8 years old, and I hope you appreciate my very snazzy school blazer there, which I don't know why I was wearing it to go to a grimy engine shed, but I guess I must have been proud of it. We're standing to a very famous locomotive, which was named Royal Scot, and it was a very famous locomotive for reasons that I'll show you in the next slide. But we got a chance to go into the cab, which is where my brother and I are looking pretty pleased with ourselves because it was such a famous locomotive. Happily, it was preserved, and my brother and I were able to reacquaint or meet up with her again some 63 years later, where I took the photograph on the right. Now, you're probably saying, why was the Royal Scot famous? If you'd like to read the nameplate that the locomotive carried, this will probably give you an idea. It's all about its trip to North America in 1933. I'll give you a chance to read the nameplate there. Now, onto some drawings. These are a couple of drawings I did when I was about 15 or 16, before I went to art school. I was just fascinated. I didn't know anything about photorealism at the time. I just liked to draw things the way that they were and get them as lifelike as possible. I was only 15 or 16. They were drawn with B pencils, that's softer grade pencils. And to get them to pop, get the highlights to pop, I actually used some white paint just to pull out the highlights. This has kind of gone a bit yellow over the years, but it had the effect at the time. I still quite like these drawings. They're a long time ago now, nearly 60 years ago.
Those are wonderful, Roger. I tried to draw trains in high school, but I wasn't anywhere close to this level. These were fantastic.
Well, I was just very, very lucky to have a loving dad who, and I shared everything, from him, including his hairstyle, sadly. But the one thing I can say about these now is I'm a lot better at drawing, decent ellipses for wheels these days. These looking back though, the wheels are the one thing that irks me just a little bit.
You probably know that's Peter Moss's #1 criteria for judging the quality of a railroad artist.
Well, absolutely. There's up at one of the heritage centres here. There's a wonderful drawing, a wonderful painting of the Royal Hudson they have up there, which I'll be showing you a lot of. And it's great, except that every driving wheel is going in a different direction. Anyway, this drawing I did, I think I was about 18 or 19. I was starting to get fascinated with the technical side of steam locomotives, and I was finding all these nice line drawings in my ever expanding library of railway books. And this whole ethos I've had of just trying to get everything right, I just really got into this, and I had a big print of this in one of my first houses, about 6 feet wide, which was quite a blow up. But now this is a brief section on photography. I studied photography at art school and fell in love with it, and I've been a professional photographer pretty much ever since, on and off. I operated mainly in the field of photographing motor cars. I did work for people like Aston Martin, Porsche, worked for had my work in magazines like Road and Track and Car and Driver. But this was back in the 70s. More recently, I'm still photographing for a big London property company, who I go over to London once a year. And photograph all their new stuff. This is a photograph of the beautiful Canadian Pacific Royal Hudson 464 on one of its very rare and now non-existent steaming days at the West Coast Railway Heritage Park in a town called Squamish, which is about 30 miles north of Vancouver here in BC. This was a photograph I took of a locomotive, another coronation class locomotive called the Duchess of Hamilton. I took this photograph on the occasion of my 50th birthday, when my then wife, had arranged for me to spend a day driving, firing and maintaining the locomotive on the Watercress line down in Hampshire, in the south of England. And I had a wonderful day. It produced, apart from the overall experience, it produced a lot of photographs, which I used as reference for drawing. And as you can see on the right there, I'm looking pretty pleased with myself, as I loved this engine in the 50s. It was one of my favorites, and so to actually be able to drive her was just an unbelievable experience. This is the same locomotive. The locomotive, the coronation class, the first of them were all streamlined when they were produced in the 1937, 38, 39, and they were in two color schemes. The first 5 were a kind of a Caledonian blue and silver, and the later ones were a lovely crimson lake with gold lining. So the Duchess of Hamilton was restored to her original streamlined form, sadly only as a static exhibit, which has been a bit of a shame. And I photographed this at the National Railway Museum. My dad told me that these engines look fantastic, but I kind of like her as I knew her when I was a train spotter, on the day when I drove her myself. Sitting side by side with the Duchess of Hamilton at the National Rail Museum is Sir Nigel Gresley's iconic streamlined A4 Class Pacific Mallard in its beautiful garter blue livery with crimson, with kind of maroon wheels. It's a lovely combination. As I'm sure most of you will know, that it still holds the world record for steam traction of 126 miles an hour. This is the Royal Hudson again, on its. It was a very wet day, which was wonderful for all the steam effects. As I know, you'll all know, you pray for a wet day so you get the steam. Hot days are useless; you get no exhaust at all. And this is another shot of her as well. Which it's a bit. I can see why she's got the plates on the front there, but I find that it's a bit annoying that they've been fitted retrospectively. But again, it's just a shame that she's not steaming anymore. I shot this at the Calgary Heritage Park last year, and this locomotive, I don't know why it's got CPR because painted on it, because it was never a CPR locomotive, never ran on the CPR. I can only assume that someone really related to the romance of the name, you know, which it certainly has. Neither of these last two drawings have I considered to do drawings from, and it's maybe, I think, because they're a bit too romantic. And I'm going to go into this kind of aesthetic a bit later in the presentation, but they look a bit retrospective and a bit romantic for me. These were the CN railway sidings in East Vancouver after a very heavy rail storm, and I just happened to be there. I wander over there every so often to see what's going on, and I'd never seen it flooded like this, you know, before or since, and the reflection was just wonderful. Okay, well, that's the photographic section. We'll now get on to my process, and these are my tools. This is all I use. At the top there we have 4 pencils, which are Staedtler Mars H, 2H, 4H, and 6H pencils. These are at the harder end of the pencil spectrum. B is softer, but the H pencils are the only ones that will give me the precise level of detail that I want. Have a kind of engraving effect into the board as well, which I like. And I found over the years that Staedtler Mars pencils, they have a smoother delivery onto the board than other brands that I've tried. It's a personal thing. You can get into very lengthy conversations with other pencil artists about what they like and what they don't like, but these ones work for me. I use a surgical scalpel to keep the points absolutely sharp, and so I'm sharpening the pencils like about once every 2 or 3 minutes.
Wow.
And then there is the eraser, which is purely to clean up. I don't use it for any effect. But the thing in the middle there is the all-important pencil extender. This must have been invented by a Scotsman, because being Scottish myself, I like to get every single out of my pencils, and so it's a very, very important part of my armory.
So you can put the little nub of the pencil in there to hold it as it's been sharpened down.
Absolutely right.
That's great, and that is, yes, beautifully Scottish.
This is where I draw. This is my drawing board, looking out over the west end of Vancouver to the coastal mountains, which are about 5,000 feet on the North Shore. I wish I could show them to you today, but we've got all the smoke from those terrible forest fires going on, which has blotted out just about everything in the landscape. So I'm afraid I can't show you that. This is the board on there. It's Strathmore Bristol board, 4-ply. It's a very thick board. It's very clear. It's very white. It's very smooth, and it's got the depth there that I need the 4-ply to take the hard pencil. If it was thinner, then the hard pencil would rip up the surface, and that's something that obviously I want to guard against. I only draw from my own photographs, and I draw very much in the now, as I want each image to be something to be a passing moment that I've actually experienced myself, and is difficult to, and would be probably, pretty much impossible to recapture. I don't know whether you're familiar with Robert Louis Stevenson's wonderful poem From a Railway Carriage, the last
Yes.
line of which is, each a glimpse of gone forever. That stayed with me all my life, and that's really what I like my drawings to. It's what I really like my drawings to that's the essence of them. There needs to be an industrial feel as well. I've got very fond memories of my train spotting days, and I'm interested in all aspects of railway history, recreating scenes from the past have never really appealed to me. I totally get why people do it, and I love a lot of what I see, but it's not something that I really want to do. This is a drawing, which is the drawing that I was commissioned by Staedtler in Germany to do a website tutorial for them, and this was back about 8 or 9 years ago, which involved me taking stage drawings which they could put on their website, and I could write a narrative to go with it. This was actually the finished drawing. So the first stage is the original photograph, and this was the original photograph. I very rarely plan my images. They tend to pop up in front of me, but I do tend to put myself in places where these images pop up. And this one was a steam special in 2009. Beautiful locomotive called the Duchess of Sutherland, which is still preserved and running every week back in the UK, and it's certainly an engine that I loved when I was train spotting. This was at Carlisle in the north of England. So I put it into Photoshop, and I crop it, and I size it, and I get the format that I want, and then I do, which is critical to me. I take multiple exposures of it, so that I can get. So I overexpose it so I can get all the detail that are in the shadows, and then I underexpose it so I can get all the detail that's in the highlights. So the image that I want to draw is one that it would be difficult to photograph. I want to produce something that is over and above, the photograph I took. And so these are just so that's the overall exposure on the left, and then there's the other two exposures will hopefully illustrate that point. The next stage is that I transfer the image to the drawing board. Now, this is not very good. I apologize for the quality of the picture on the left, but at this point, I transfer it by a mixture of tracing and construction. And at this point, I make sure all the verticals are vertical. I make sure all the horizontals are horizontal. I adjust the perspective to what I want it to be, and I check all the ellipses. So this is the stage at which this is like the skeleton of the drawing before I start putting the muscles and the flesh on it. And so it's crucial to get everything right at this particular point. And then I very gradually then apply the graphite. I build up the layers. I build it up in layers because that not only imparts a smoothness to the operation, but it gives you control over the tonal values. And the tonal values are constantly being adjusted as I go through the drawing. Because I often find out that maybe one area needs to be a bit darker. So once you've done that, that then affects all the other areas, and so they have to be adjusted to. They have to be adjusted to really just to go along with the way that the drawing's going. So that I kind of do it by sections. I've got a very compartmentalized brain, so I've been told. Again, this is the finished drawing. This is the one Staedtler wanted this part of it. They wanted it unfinished, just to underline the fact that it was a drawing, and just to get over the essence of the process.
I see you rotated the wheels from the photograph.
Did I? Yeah, I might well have done. Yeah, I might well have done. Yes, because there would have been. I'll have to check that out actually, because I usually work from from 2 or 3 different exposures.
Sure.
So yeah, I'll have to go back and check that out.
Well, I mean, you put the more railfan preferred perspective with the rods down rather than up as they were in the photograph.
Right, and I always like to draw engines with the reversing gear in full forward gear as well,
Sure.
as opposed to reverse. I don't know what it is. I kind of like maybe it's maybe looking forward rather than back.
Absolutely.
Now, this section is it's all about my early attempts at photorealism, and I was about 18 or 19. I just started going to art school, and because being an impoverished art student, I didn't have the money, I didn't have the transport, I didn't have the opportunity to get out and photograph my own reference. That I used to use images from books, which I was getting by the famous railway photographers like the Reverend Eric Tracy, for instance. And these drawings, they weren't very big. They're probably about 4 or 5 inches over the longest dimension. This one is an LNER A3 Pacific. This is Flying Scotsman. These drawings were they were never intended to be published or sold or anything. I hadn't got any aspirations like that, but they were just exercises in helping me develop my photorealistic technique. Being a great respecter of copyright, I would never ever sell these as they're drawings based on other people's photographs. And to this day, they reside with family and friends. My brother's got this one, for instance. This was kind of the last one that I did. In this segment of my life, using other people's photographs. Now, I've called this section "All My Own Work" because that's basically what it is. These drawings now date from about the mid-70s, when happily I was an art director in publishing by then, and I had some money, and so I was able to get out and about and shoot my own reference, and that made life a whole lot more interesting, and I really felt good about taking total ownership of what I was doing. These drawings are actually quite small. They're smaller than the last. They're only about sort of 4 inches over the longest dimension. At this point, I was being an art director in publishing. I was commissioning a lot of the country's leading artists and photographers, in fact, and some of them became very good friends and started giving me advice as to how to really develop the process, the process that I wanted. And they steered me at this point towards hard pencils, and they steered me towards the right board the right board to get as well. So it was a very important part of my early development. This is probably one of the most photorealistic drawings I've ever done. I did this one in about 1979. It's the valve gear of an XLMS Jubilee class locomotive, which I found, and that's only about 4 inches deep. But it's it was a pivotal drawing for me, drawing for me in a lot of ways. As was this one. Again, I think this one's about 4 inches square. Again, it's just the eccentric crank of the same locomotive. This was a very important drawing for me. This was a drawing that was hung in the Royal Academy in 2003. And my first thought was, that my late dad would have been very pleased. He would have loved that. And my second thought was that I felt very lucky to have had a drawing of a steam engine hanging in the same gallery that my hero JMW Turner had his Rain, Steam and Speed drawing, you know, so the fact that, you know, that this drawing hung in the same building as his was absolutely huge.
That's a high company.
2003 was a wonderful year because my then wife, who's a very accomplished portrait painter, it was the first year that she had her work selected for hanging with the Royal Society of Portrait Painters in the Mall Galleries in London. And they opened pretty much on the same day, and so we had a big slap-up lunch to celebrate our good fortune. Incidentally, at this time, I was working. I was working in publishing, and I had the occasion to speak to O. Winston Link, who had been one of my heroes, and I talked to him about publishing his work in the UK, and his opening gambit, because his agent he said, well, you better speak to him yourself. So I thought, wow, okay, you know. And the first thing he said to me was, he said, you know, all Englishmen are crazy, don't you? And I said, well, that's all right, because I'm Scottish. Anyway, so he laughed, and then we chatted, but that was shortly before he died, sadly. And the project came to nothing, which was a real shame. But having been able to speak to the great man is one of the highlights of my life, really. Now I'm backtracking a bit here. When I went to art school in the late 60s, I was taught by an inspirational drawing tutor who'd studied at the Slade School in London. And he instilled in us the importance of drawing what you see and not what you think you see. And having studied at the Slade, the technique there, the taught there was establishing accuracy by very careful measurement and fixing points, you know, and getting the distances right and getting the angles right, and then building up the drawing from that. Now, this seemed totally logical to me, and I absolutely loved it. And I was drawing from life everywhere, all the time. This drawing occupied me for a very enjoyable week in the summer of 1967. These are two other drawings. These ones are from my home signal box in the southeast of England. And the story about this was, back then, this was again while I was at art school, I got involved in a group who were restoring a narrow gauge steam engine. And one of them was the signalman at the of my hometown signal box. And he let me go up there at night, about 10 o'clock. And he then explained all the workings of the signal box. He told me a lot of stories, and let me operate the levers and some of the things under his watchful eye. And then, of course, I had to sneak out about 6 o'clock in the morning so I didn't get caught by the station master. But it was great. Those wonderful evenings. The fire was going, you know, and the night trains were going through, and it was a wonderful experience. Sometimes I do drawings from life, and then I finish them off when I go home if I like them enough. And these are two. I did these drawings at started off at a Crew Works open day in 2004. And I liked them, and I kind of worked them up a little bit when I got back. That's my 10-year-old son, very unwillingly modelling beside the Duchess of Sutherland, which was the locomotive in the Staedtler drawing that I did. I tried to categorize the remaining drawings. This is now into what I'm drawing now, pretty much. And I tried to categorize them into various categories, but you know, it's kind of worked. But firstly, still life. Now, I'm sure everyone will recognize this as an injector. I think it's off a locomotive at the National Railway Museum. This was a drawing that was published in a book called Emotions of Railway Art, which was a book produced by the Guild of Railway Artists, and I had 2 or 3 drawings in that book, in actual fact. But that was that, and this one, this is the bell of a very famous locomotive, the Great Western Railway's King George V. And it carried this bell throughout its life. And the bell was presented to the locomotive by the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad in 1927, when the King George V went over as part of the centenary celebrations. And it was quite interesting because one of the American journalists was so taken by its uncluttered appearance and how smoothly it ran that he wrote about it. He said, "This isn't a locomotive; it's an automobile."
Wow.
So because it obviously was, the Great Western Railway, their locomotives were neater and tidier than any other lines. They paid just as much attention to appearance as as anything else. They were very neat and tidy, hid all the pipes away, had copper cap chimneys and beautiful brass safety valve covers and things like that. This was a drawing. It's the top of the Royal Hudson again, and this is just I was just taken with the steam against the approaching storm coming, and I just love the atmosphere of that was created. Steam locomotives, they're really all about action, and while I very rarely plan a shoot or anything like that, as I said, the drawings tend to pop up in front of me. This drawing was for the book Emotions of Railway Art in the UK, and I really wanted to do something special. So, having advance notice of one of the rare runs by the Royal Hudson, I planned this one and rehearsed it. I travelled a section of the route the day before and found a location which would give me the right angle and give me the right light for the time of day it would be passing. And I photographed the train that was going past, and it worked out all right. So I went down the next day, and and happily everything worked out. Oh, right. I also got a shot as the train was disappearing. This drawing also got into the book, and it also hung in the National Railway Museum at an exhibition that was that was based on the book. These two drawings are from the day I spent with the Duchess of Hamilton on my 50th birthday, which seems a long time ago now. These drawings, they were published in a book called Along Artistic Lines. It was a book produced by by a combination of the Guild of Railway Artists and the National Railway Museum in York. And the exhibition was held in 2004 to mark 200 years of the steam locomotive. And I was very honoured because these two drawings, they hung beside a drawing by one of our greatest ever railway artists, David Shepherd, who was obviously more famous for his paintings of elephants, but than was steam engines. But to be in close proximity to his work was a real honour. This is the Royal Hudson. I'm afraid it keeps cropping up because when I arrived in BC in 2005, it was the only operating steam engine. So what do? You have to photograph what's there. This was a combination of three different photographs, which I put together to get the composition that I really wanted, and to get the reflections that I wanted. Some weren't quite right. Some of the others, the steam wasn't quite right, and so there was quite a lot of preparation work in this one. This was a shot from the observation car of Via Rail's the Canadian service, which runs between Vancouver and Toronto. Everyone else had gone off downstairs for dinner. But this sunset, which was approached when we were approaching Winnipeg in Manitoba, I just found it absolutely fascinating. So I missed out on dinner, but it was worth it just to get a series of great shots, and I just loved drawing this one. There was some drawings you get pure joy out of. Others are a struggle. This one was just a pure joy, just working on all the on all the inconsistencies and dents and everything of the stainless steel roof. This drawing was done specifically for the opening of my London Gallery's new space in 2016. I always like my drawings to have an element of movement and depth and shallow depth of field. And this one sort of fitted all those, just ticked all the boxes with the reflections and the movement and the 3D effect of the of the train going past on the right hand side.
And a fisheye lens perspective there?
No, it was. I mean, most of these, Scott, most of the ones I've shot recently, they were just shot on my iPhone.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I found that the quality you get out of iPhones. I mean, you know, being a professional photographer, I kind of felt this very, very unfair that iPhones can get such good results. But there again, they do have the benefit. You've always got them with you. You're not carrying the heavy artillery around. And with you know, if you just got a point and shoot, you get shots that you wouldn't otherwise get, I find, anyway. And so, and as most of my images are pure happenstance, you know, the camera phone is perfect for that element of my process.
Well, the best camera is the one you have.
Absolutely right. I mean, the number. I'm sure I speak for a lot of us that while figuring out which lens to which lens to use, we can lose the shot. I'm just trying to figure out what. Right now, this is an important drawing for me. This was the first drawing that sold at my OK Harris show, and it was bought by our good friend Peter Moss. And I'm so being the art connoisseur that he is, I was just thrilled that he actually wanted this particular drawing. And as you've mentioned OK Harris. Just a little bit of background on OK Harris. OK Harris was set up by Ivan C. Karp back in 1968, and he was responsible for discovering Andy Warhol when he was working for Leo Castelli, and he went on to open OK Harris, which became one of the premier galleries in New York, and certainly one of the premier galleries for photorealism. So it was his son who offered me my first show there, and so I was absolutely thrilled to get that opportunity. This is another New York subway shop drawing. This is quite a recent one. It's now with my gallery, my Anthony Brunelli Fine Arts in New York. There was so much about this shop that I liked. I mean, the perspective and all the different textures that you know, from the shiny reflective side of the train to all the textures on the platform. And being a typographer, I really enjoy working on any form of typography as well. I like shiny stuff, but I find the pathos and poignancy of once proud steam locomotives left to their fate. I find that very moving, and it's a recurring theme in my work. This drawing was again very, very, very important drawing for me. It was the promotional image for my first show at OK Harris, and it was actually bought by the owner of the gallery at the end of the show. And he's got a wonderful collection of photorealism by a lot of my heroes, and so to have my work hanging up there with those is was really gratifying. This is the same locomotive, but just the back end. Peter actually noticed that I'd gerrymandered this one a little bit, which of course he would. The side windows there, it originally only had 4 panes, but I so enjoyed the 4 panes and was getting a bit bored with just the peeling paintwork that I added another couple of panes to the left-hand side, thinking that nobody would notice, but obviously that wasn't the case. This was all these locomotives were at Scranton Steamtown in Pennsylvania, and this one I actually did this one last year. This locomotive I found on the White Pass and Yukon Railroad at Skagway in Alaska. I just wandered down this deserted bit of track, and there was this wonderful locomotive just sitting there, and it was just rotting, and it was gradually being taken over by all the weeds and everything, and it was just really, really sad that it was just sitting there. Apparently, I think that it had come off the tracks and ended up in a river at some point, and it had never run again after that. But I called this one reclamation. This last section is mixed traffic because they don't fall into any identifiable category. This was the Canadian just before it departed for Toronto. This is sidings on a wet night in North Vancouver. I was driving my daughter take her to a movie, saw this and said, sorry about the movie, went home and got my camera and had to shoot it. And it's one of my favorite drawings, and sold at my OK Harris show. This drawing was the one that Ethan Karp liked so much he offered me my show there, and apparently it was bought by George Bush's Secretary for Finance.
Wow.
So he probably printed the money himself. I don't know, but it was. But again, it's the Royal Hudson, as you know. Everyone will be getting to know her very well by now. Looking through the roof of St Pancras Station, my favourite building in the world, looking at the Gothic clock tower, and it just happens, being in the right place at the right time when the sun came through. And these are the last few I've done now. I've done all these during the pandemic. This is the Royal Hudson again. Everyone seems to find the white picket fence the most interesting part of the drawing, which is a bit of a shame. But but I don't care. As long as people find something of interest in every drawing, then that's absolutely fine with me. This is the same, the same locomotive, obviously, and the same fence. Although I had to lengthen it a little bit just to make sure that it fitted the composition properly. This is my most recent drawing. I've just got a fascination with the New York subway. It's got a lovely industrial feel that the London Underground just doesn't have. I spend a lot of time down there whenever I'm in New York. I just absolutely I'm intrigued by it. This one. I don't know where this one's going to go yet, because I'm not sending anything anywhere at the moment until we know exactly how the pandemic's going to pan out. The future. Well, the future. I always like to challenge myself, and my new challenge, born out of the pandemic, is to increase my size once again. The last few drawings, they've been averaging about 16 inches over the longest dimension. This one is going to be 18 by 24, which might not seem much until you think back that when I started doing photorealistic drawings, I was drawing about 4 inches square. So I'm really enjoying this one. This is where I am on it at the moment. As you can see, I've opened up the dark areas on the underside of the boiler, just to get all the detail that's going there. And so I'm about I don't know, 2/3 of the way through it now, I would think. The other drawings used to take a month to 6 weeks. How long this one's going to take, I have no idea. So that's about it. Once again, I really want to say thanks very much to you and Peter for giving me this opportunity to show my work, and also to Haley for helping me get all the technical side sorted out, apart from anything else, and just really being a comfort zone for all what looked like insurmountable obstacles in getting the work on the screen.
Not a problem.
Oh, Roger, fantastic work. should take a look at the comments in the chat section. I think there's been a lot of people that need to still put their jaws up off the floor, myself certainly included.
Oh well, that's very that's very good to hear. I mean, I'm such an admirer of the centre, and the quality of work on it is just phenomenal. And so to be a part of it just for today is a real honour. It really is.
I think there are pages in Railroad Heritage waiting anytime you would like to fill them. So please be in touch.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Oh, Roger, thank you. Superb work. We are running just a little bit over time, and so I think
sorry about that.
No, quite all right. I mean, I don't think too many of us have too many pressing evening plans with the pandemic going on today. But we do want to get our last two presenters up and running here. If you have time to stick around, I'm happy to stay for Q&A sessions after the other presentations.
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
Absolutely.
So, great.
Okay.
Well,